everybody. This is Emily Korsh, your USARA social media captain. I have a very special guest today. This is the USARA Executive Director, Michael Garrison. And Mike, we want to talk to you about the recent Central Indiana Adventure Race. I understand you were there. Can you tell us about your team and kind of what brought you to the CIA?
Yeah. Technically, if you look at the results, my team was me. I raced as a solo for the race, but I raced with Rib Mountain for the majority of the race. Kind of talk about how that worked out early on here in a bit. But, I did my first DINO race probably in 2006 or so, a mission, 6 or 7, I can't remember. And so it was local. It was an hour from where I live. And Rib Mountain was coming down. They had asked, Heather to race, and we hadn't talked about racing at that point yet. And so I said, you go for it. I'll just sign up solo. And that was just like 2 weeks before the race started. So with everything that's been going on, it was kind of like last minute opportunity to race. And so, yeah, it came together and it was a good day.
Nice. So you were a solo. You kind of raced in conjunction with Rib Mountain's 3-person team. How did that work out logistically? Were you able to keep up with each other, or did you get separated ever? How did that work?
It worked out fairly well. I think by now you've heard everybody talk about the main sections of the course. So we opened with like a 7-mile scooter rollerblade. I was on a scooter, everybody else was on the rollerblade, and I think Eric Rib said it best that the race could stop after this section and I'd still be sore tomorrow. It wasn't like the most grueling thing in the world.
You don't train
No.
for
God, no. The arch of my right foot is completely blown up today from pushing on the scooter. So we had talked because with Brian's races, so a lot of race directors take different approaches to how much of the course you see when. Some you get the maps for the whole course after the race starts. Some you get sections, etc. So for his races, you don't get anything until the section starts. In fact, we started with just a scooter skate away from the start-finish area to pick up the first big map. Then we had to plot a couple points, and then we took off from there. Wow. So you also don't know what the next section is.
You didn't get your main map until a couple hours into the race.
No.
Wow.
It was like 10 or 15 minutes at tops. Okay. So it was going basically like a mile. He basically was trying to split people up a little bit. Then you pick up your maps, drop down the parking lot, plot up the points real quick. And I think there was 2 or 3 points. And it dropped us on a river. So we didn't know that the paddle was next, but it kind of made sense to the paddle was next. So because you don't get the next section until you finish the previous section, there's a little bit of strategy involved in making some course decisions. And then he also, the way he structures the scoring, because it's somewhat Rogaine style within each section, but you have to get all the points within each section. Now you can skip points, but if you skip a point, you get a penalty point. So later in the race, you have to kind of start deciding, when it makes a good idea to drop. But early, you pretty much decide, you're going to get them all. Right. So anyways, we're on the scooter and the skates, and I'm talking to Tim, and we're talking about the paddle. We knew I'd be in a kayak, and we'd seen the kayaks. They're not looking like super fast kayaks. So I started to go ahead of them a little bit, about halfway through. Then there was a funky decision on route, and so I actually waited up for him to make sure that we kind of didn't get totally out of whack. But then I took off on the scooter, got to the boats, got in the water just a little bit ahead of them. There was 2 embedded treks, pretty short ones. The first one, they caught up to me and took off. We took off together, and I was like, hey, guys, go ahead, you're racing 3 co-ed. I'm not going to be able to keep up. Just go ahead and take off. If we see each other again, fantastic. If not, I will see you at the finish line. I've done this before.
We're still friends.
I think I'll be okay, yeah. And the paddle on the open water, they were faster. Then we hit a big section with a lot of sandbars and logs and stuff, and I was able to maneuver through faster than all the canoes. So I just put the hammer down and got as far ahead of them as I could. And then, long story short, at the end of the paddle, we were pretty much neck and neck again. And then at that point, it was trek by trek. So we just stayed together the rest of the race.
Right. Nice. So was that, I know you've done a lot of DINO races with Brian as the race director in the past, but do you feel like that particular format where the course is revealed, only one section at a time? Does that make the race more stressful for you or less stressful because there's less information? Like, how does that play out with your strategy?
Probably a little bit more stressful towards the end. So when you cross like into well, depending if it's the 18 or 12-hour version, when you get down to the last few hours and you're not sure how many sections are left, then it starts to get a little nerve-wracking. And also depends on how fast you think you're going. So we were feeling pretty good about our pace. Because it was a pretty horsepower intensive race. So there was lots of road running and trail running, and the biking was pretty flat. It was in north of Indianapolis. So southern Indiana is super hilly. North, it's pretty flat. So if you had some horsepower, you could really move. So we felt good, like we were going to clear it. We weren't going to have to make any decisions about, dropping points and stuff like that. But it is still kind of, you're trying to guess what's next, mentally preparing yourself. Like, you don't have necessarily, until you get the course or the clues for that last section, you don't have that determined, like, okay, this is it, then we're done.
Mm-hmm.
So coming in off the bike, I was thinking we still had 3 sections left because I didn't have a watch on. Tim's like, there's only like 3.5 hours. I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is it.
Right.
Yeah, and then we got the last section and then went. But it's still, then at the end of the race, he's usually really good at designing courses that, like, it's a handful to get done. Mm-hmm. And so, like any course where it's, Rogaine style, you have to decide what the best strategy is. So if things go sideways, you don't hose yourself and come in late or drop more points, than you would have liked to.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like there's some similarities between the DINO Adventure Racing CIA race, and I know this is a stretch, but I'm going to go for it. Similarities between DINO CIA 12-hour and the Eco Challenge 10-day adventure race in Fiji. And actually, you were there at the Fiji race. So did you take any of the lessons that you learned from Fiji and apply them here at the 12-hour?
Yeah, two things. One, this hurt more. And so considering how scared I was to do my first expedition race, ever since then, I've known that like a short race, like 24 hours and shorter, when you're racing to be competitive, you're going so hard that it's really uncomfortable / painful. When it's an expedition, it's a little bit different. You're still pushing, but you have to measure it a little bit. And so, like, I'm crazy sore today, not just from the scootering either. Like, the whole thing, beat me up pretty good. But I got mocked and ridiculed the night before the race because everybody's preparing their bars and their gels and their drink mixes, and I'm making a chicken and turkey pepperoni and smoked Gouda sandwich with extra mustard to put in my pack. And everybody's like, it's only 12 hours. Why are you eating real food? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess this isn't normally what I would do, but that's something that, like, I feel way better if I eat, real food. So yeah, I had a sandwich and I brought one of those little pickle in a package things for the vinegar. That was clutch.
Yep.
So yeah, that was not a ton of direct similarities, other than Eco didn't hurt as bad.
Wow, that's like that. Yeah, I just think that's so interesting, and I agree with you that those shorter, when in adventure racing, when we say a short race, we do really mean 24 hours and under. It seems like crazy, but it's true. That you're just going so quick. If you're trying to compete for the win, you're just pedal to the metal the whole time, and it's really, the next day is like everyone's looks like you just ran 2 marathons, like PR pace, kind of hobbling around.
And racing, like, I've raced with Tim before, and Tim's one of those people. He is really good at keeping the urgency dialed to 11 the whole race, and to race in this short of a race, when you've got teams you're neck and neck with, like, you have to be urgent all the time. And I personally am not great at that. I race best when I have somebody else that can help apply the urgency. I do my thing with the navigation or whatever. And so, yeah, we had a race or a team within eyesight almost the entire time. And so that anxiety and then that level of, urgency. Yeah, you're going pretty hard.
Right. Nice. So once you recover from the CIA, do you have any other races on your calendar left for 2020?
I was originally going to do my first 100-mile ultra marathon in November.
Whoa.
They got their permits. Well, they got their permits reduced to like only 50 people for the 100-miler and 50 people for the 50 miler. It's the Tunnel Hill Ultra in Southern Illinois.
Uh-huh.
So I decided to defer until next year for 2 reasons. You can decide which one was bigger. A, quantity of training I've done in my preparedness, and B, wanting to let people who are actual ultra marathoners, ultra runners, have a shot at a race that I think it's actually a qualifier for Western States. You can get like gold tickets.
Who says you're not an actual ultra marathoner?
I've run that distance out of necessity within an adventure race, but I don't even consider myself a runner. I can run, but I'm not a runner.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So no Tunnel Hill for you.
And then Castlewood in December.
Oh, hey, I know the race director for that one.
You know the race director for that one.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, full disclosure that the Castlewood 8 Hour is my race in St. Louis, Missouri. So it's the first weekend in December, and we're always, we still have actually some spots open. So feel free to check that out. So one final question for you. Did anyone at the race kind of come up to you like, hey, Michael Garrison, you're the executive director at USARA. Like, did you have any of those kinds of conversations at the race?
Only after. I'm a relatively quiet person by nature, and Brian, when he did the awards, he announced who I was and the role that I had. I don't know that a lot of people knew. And I talked to, I forgot his last name, but Jed that does Read the Rock in Arkansas, and talked to him a little bit after the race because he races a solo as well, and he was giving me a hard time. He's like, because I race with Rib, which admittedly there is an advantage to having a team around to help push you rather than just being in your own head the whole time. So we had a good chat, but I had a few people, one in particular that used to race a fair amount, hasn't raced in like 6 years in adventure racing. He's done other stuff. He came back out and raced this race, and I recognized a lot of faces that hadn't been around for a while. They came back, and then Brian asked everybody like how many people are first timers, and the people that were left for the 12-hour awards, which it was getting late at that point, I would say about a quarter to a third of the people there, and this is on a 12-hour course, were first timers.
Wow.
Presumably a lot of those were Eco Effect, and I'm sure the 4-hour was even more.
Right.
So
yeah.
This was the best attended adventure race ever, I believe.
Wow. That's
in total numbers.
Well, yeah, and we talked to Julia and Logan Roberts, who were first timers at the 4-hour race because of Eco. They saw the show on Amazon Prime, knew that they had to try it, and then found themselves at a race. So just for anybody in the future that finds themselves at a race with Mike Garrison there, when's the best time to come up to you with the next big idea for USARA?
Not in transition during the race. Other than that, it's fun. I got a hard enough time transitioning fast with my own team talking to me. I'm really going to struggle if other people. But other than that, before or after, anytime. And please introduce yourself too, because I've already had a couple people. I forgot to look their names up. There's a couple guys at the ICO Rogaine that I recognized and came up to me on course. We're looking for a point together. They just started talking to me using my name, and I'm like, oh crap. And you miss that window that you have to ask people for their names again. And I'm just chatting with them because I know I've talked to them before. So yeah.
Right.
But
well,
yeah,
hopefully they can see your interview, and then you guys can reintroduce everybody. And we're just like, yep, we're golden. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, the final question on all of these field report interviews is, do you have any shout outs? So who would you like to use your, 15 minutes of USARA fame to give a shout out to?
I should have known that was coming, huh?
Ooh,
no, honestly, I just want to thank Brian for putting the race on and for doing such a good job with putting on a race in the current environment. It's a little nerve-wracking, and trying to make sure you're covering all your bases and being as responsible as possible. And then you've got the Eco Effect bringing all these extra people. And then you've got people that haven't seen each other for like a year, and everybody's trying to resist that urge to like, hey, how's it going on? Giving hugs and stuff like that. But he did a good job kind of managing the whole race, and it was good to see everybody out there again. And so yeah.
Nice. Good shout out.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's all we have for today's field report at the DINO Adventure Racing Central Indiana Adventure, also known as the CIA 12-hour. We'll be back at the next event with some more interviews from racers. So thanks, Garrison, and we'll see you at the next one.
Sounds good. Take it easy.